is Behind the Games from newoverlords.com, where we seek creators of all kinds to find out what's behind our favorite games. With your hosts, Jeff and Seema.
This is New Overlords Behind the Games podcast. And from just outside Chicago, I'm Jeff Ilimek.
And from the great Northeast, where we got about 6 inches of snow today, I'm Seema.
Today, we're joined by Dazia Pineda, a project manager and producer in game development in Mexico. Worked at a few different places, which we'll hear about. Dazia is also an ambassador for women in games across Latin America. Dazia, hello.
Hey, thank you for inviting me.
Thanks for being here. I'm really excited. I know you've just hit your 10-year anniversary in the games industry. We're certainly going to talk about what you've done over that time and the places you've worked and where you're working now at TagWiz. I know you're a producer over in-house games, and then something that's also pretty interesting to us, you're also a producer over partner studios bringing games to you to sort of get work done. So we'll talk about how that works. And then we'll definitely spend some time on Women in GameX. So that's Women in Games in Mexico, which is very interesting to us. We've talked to Women in Games ambassadors from a couple other countries around the world so far, and we love to hear about that. And I certainly want to hear more about just the games industry in general and women in games in Latin America. So that's going to be great. But to kick us off, really glad to have you here. And I know 10 years is a lot to sort of sum up in 10, 15 minutes or however long you want to spend. But why don't you talk about what that 10 years was, how you got here, some of the things you're doing today, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. Hey, everyone again. Well, first of all, my background is as an engineer. I actually specialize in artificial intelligence and that sort of thing. Even though I'm no longer programming that kind of stuff, I still love to read it. But one of the things I had back in college was that I actually had a video game class. How to make video games in Unity. And I'm talking about 2010, like 2010, back then. It was weird. It was fun. And it actually confirmed my idea that in some way, I wanted to be part of the video game industry, like making games, right? I mean, it is the dream of many people. Most of us born in the 90s. It's like our dream.
And before then. And maybe even
a couple of decades before, yes. But I actually had the opportunity right after college to get into Oracle. And it was good. I learned a lot. I mean, it is Oracle.
Yeah.
So
useful tool.
It does.
That's a great start. Yeah.
Yeah, completely. And for some reason, I wasn't happy. I mean, it was a really good job. It was a really, really good paid. But I wasn't happy. So I had the opportunity to step down from there, start looking to other opportunities. And in some crazy way, I contacted a friend of mine who used to have a studio here in Mexico, like back in 2008 or something like that. And he was like, I mean, I wish I could give you like a job, but I'm about to go broke. This is literally what happened. And he was like, you know what? But there's someone that I know where they're looking for people. And I was like, okay. And at that point, I was actually looking for like programming, engineering, some sort of thing on that side. It wasn't even considering the project management one. And he was like, you know what? Apply to Gameloft. And I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And I actually sent my CV. And in a couple of hours, they got back to me. Like literally, that's crazy. My story is crazy how I got in. And the same day they were like, we like your curriculum. Here is some kind of test that you have to do. Check out like 3 of our games or 5 of our games. Don't remember which ones. Because they sent like a list of what I could check out. And they were like, just send us like your opinion on what could you improve from these games. What would you do? And I was like, wow, I mean, these are Gameloft games. Like, what I
Gameloft
can
is one of the
give,
biggest mobile
what
app
can I
developers, mobile
give
game developers.
out? Yeah, what can I offer? Knowing
What a
nothing.
great way to do an interview, too.
Yeah.
Yes, and I was like, okay. And they were like, okay, we'll give you like 5 days. Write us down a proposal, kind of thingy. I went all out. I took it super seriously. I don't know why. It felt like it has to be that way. And I sent it over after those 5 days, and it just took them like 1 day to come back to me and say, we want you. Let's see if you like it and everything. But we need you like next week. And I was like, wait, what? And it was in a different city and everything. And I was like, wait, what? I was not expecting that. I was literally like, and mentally thinking that this is going to take at least 3 months, right?
Yeah.
Like I still have
That's kind of more
3
normal.
months. Yeah, 3 to 6 months to like get everything together and see where it was going to be and everything. And they were like, nope, just 1 week. And I was like, I have a house. I need to move out. I need to know, because I had like 1 year that I bought a house back then. And I was like, I need to know what I'm going to do with this house. Like, and I only have 1 week and I have to go there. And what am I going to do? And it was a lot of emotions. It was crazy. I got right now who interviewed me back then and became my boss is right now is a really good friend, Max Blancarte. And he was like, but there is a big but. And I was like, what is it? And he was, this job is in Mexicali. Mexicali, for those who don't know, is like the northest city in Mexico.
Okay.
Like, if you want to check it out, is between right where California gets lost.
Yeah.
Right in next to Calexico and Imperial Valley and all that. So it is a desert. It is hot. And the warning I was given was like, it is really hot. And I was like, sure. I mean, I'm from a city called Mazatlan. It is beachside. I know what is hot. I thought I knew. And I said yes. Like everything was in 1 week.
Wow.
From when I sent my curriculum to I said yes. Because the offer was also really good and like everything matched.
Yeah, that's excellent.
Here I am, 10 years later.
So you were at Gameloft, and now you're at TagWiz. When you were, is TagWiz also in the same area? So
no, actually.
Okay, so you moved. Did you have to move again?
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, one of the things that happened with Gameloft was, like many people know, it was bought out by Vivendi.
Yep.
And many studios closed and everything. So we also got hit in Mexico. We were even betting between us like when it was going to happen, because it was not about if it was going to happen. It was when it was going to happen.
Sure.
And it did. Thankfully for me, when I just started at Gameloft, I met one of the bosses there that is called Adrian Himate. And after a couple of years later, he actually left everything out and started his own company called TagWiz. It's been already 8 years. And he actually, the next day, the same day I got my paycheck after the layoff, because in Mexico, because of laws, you have to get a paycheck. He was like, I'll be in Mexicali like on Wednesday. That was on Friday. And he was like, let's meet for breakfast. And I was like, okay. And he was like, I have an offer for you. And I was like, I thought I was going to get a couple of weeks vacation, a couple of months, but no, I actually went back into working like next week.
Again, where's my 3-month sabbatical?
Yeah, it was like, where's my sabbatical? Nope, there was no sabbatical. It was just a couple of days. And
interesting.
right now it's been almost 3 years too that I've been working with TagWiz, and it has been a great opportunity and a different way. Because at Game Love, I had all this machinery and processes and things across the globe, and working with a lot of countries and languages and people.
Right.
Because for those who don't know, even mobile games at Game Love took like almost 300 people.
Yeah.
So
Well, it was focused on getting it to a whole bunch of different platforms, a whole bunch of different languages, all the localization, all the public, all of the engineering to make
it was
a
it was a
mobile
lot
game
of work.
global.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's huge. Yeah.
Yeah. And I got to learn a lot. And when I came to TagWiz, there were a lot of things that he implemented because of his days at Ubisoft, because he's also ex Ubisoft, Adrian. And then what he built along with Game Love, because he's one of the first employees at Game Love too. So he's also a veteran, and coming here, it was a lot of those things that I loved without the crunch, because I know that seems medical, but it actually happens. We don't actually crunch any time. We don't. But we have learned how to do it.
I think the industry in general is getting a little bit better.
Yes.
We're hearing more and more reports of it getting better, but it certainly has not been great in the past. And that idea of crunch and difficulty has been a challenge. Another thing that we may end up seeing, especially right now, is in this era of a little bit of a pullback, is consolidation. So you get the acquisitions of companies, of studios. You get studios that get closed because you're consolidating. You only need so many people, so many studios, so many disparate locations. So I wonder if we're going to potentially see a little bit of that coming up. But getting in early at a smaller organization and watching it grow had to be really exciting. So
yes, it has. I mean, right now we are considered a AA company. We are over 100 employees across the globe. We don't only exist in Mexico. We actually have people in Europe, in other places of Latin America. Our company legally exists in the US, Mexico, and France. We have it all covered, which is fun. And it's actually quite good for us.
And what you guys do, and we'll talk about a couple of the examples, what you guys do is both in-house games. You've got a games brand that you work on. And then this idea of other companies partnering with you and bringing their games to you as a studio to, again, help it get developed or help bring it to more platforms. So let's talk about the in-house stuff, and then we'll talk about the other studio approach as well.
Yeah, one of our brands, because we are trying to build a new one, it is called Music Puzzle. The idea behind Music Puzzle is that there are not many games where music is the base of the game without it having to be a rhythm, like typical rhythm game.
Shooter, rhythm fighter.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or just straight up rhythm like Beat Saber.
Yeah. So that's the main idea behind it, because our CEO, Adrian, he loves music, and he thought that it was a good way to have that different way of seeing the world and bringing something new. We have some games under Music Puzzle brand.
I looked at a couple of them, and they do look pretty interesting and pretty different. So you've got like the city builder one that looked cool, kind of rhythmish, but you're putting together a sort of like assembling a building. It's a very clean lines, very very
the idea
looking.
is like to build a beautiful city with rhythm, yes, but at the rhythm of a song you actually like Billie Eilish or Queen or something like that is a little bit difficult sometimes to have in a game. And you build it, and you can like play as many times as you want and make as many different buildings around it. And it's just a way of once you play it, it's a way of like relaxing and getting like cozy, because it's just like beautiful and rhythm and mixed with like getting something done by yourself and looking at
just a
at
little
it at the end.
almost meditative in that way. But listening to music, and it's also very artistic. It's clean lines. It's almost like vector lines. And then you've got another one I was looking at called Mosh Pit. That one's still in development, right?
That one is still in development. Is getting crazy too. Because that one it's quite different. But the idea behind it is like whenever you go to this rock concert or something like that, that you get the mosh pit to dance and break everyone out and scream and dance and whatever. Like regular people don't actually get into that, but that's the idea behind it. And you have to like start dancing in a way that you hit the others and you take them out of the mosh pit.
Yeah, it's almost like a mini battle royale fighting game. It's pixel art, it's mosh pit, it's music, that looked pretty clever and interesting and different.
And you have this rock music around it, and the characters are rockers and they have this feeling that they're having fun. So you also get power-ups and things around it. So it is a multiplayer game at the end of the day. But
that seemed interesting.
A little bit different.
Yeah. So those are in-house projects. On those kinds of projects, when you're doing an in-house project, what are the kind of things that you're doing, sort of overseeing those projects from a producer and project management perspective?
Sometimes it's on the lines of obviously coming up with not necessarily the main idea, but listening to the main idea from whoever came. Because sometimes it comes from a developer, sometimes comes from the art director or the CEO or one of us. Like anyone can have any idea. If it is good enough, we use that. In a way, it has to be like coming with the standard idea of the game along with the game designers and defining everything. In my case, I'm not directly involved in the development. I'm overseeing some of the projects by checking them out, what has been done, testing out the game with real players, seeing what we can improve, what can be changed from a different perspective. Because the other producers have obviously a little bit less time than me. So here comes my sort of experience, and I'm helping them out to improve that, to get more retention, to get more people playing, going through, improving the tutorials, because I hate them. And I think most people do. So how we can make them better and less painful, because we do need them sometimes. So yeah, that's right now basically my job, to help improve them.
You know what that sounds like to me is the job that an editor has with an author. Yeah. So an author is, got all these ideas and they write. And sometimes they write a lot and sometimes it goes off in a direction. And sometimes the voice and the story that they hear in their head isn't necessarily what's coming out on the paper. Yeah. So then it's the editor's job. And in your case, as a person producing the games, to look at it holistically, make sure it serves the audience, make sure there's no friction between how a player might approach it, and make use of the game and getting it to a state where it can be played and get out there to market. That's really interesting. It's definitely a specialized skill set, because some people are just like the creatives are going to go and they just want to come up with big ideas.
They just get crazy and that's it.
But without sort of that producer putting some framework around it, you could end just with hallucinations.
One of the things I tell my junior producers or other producers that we have is that our main job is to learn how to say no without actually saying no to the other people. Because everyone gets creative.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that all the creativeness is good and that all the ideas are good. And even if they're good, we have to consider when are we going to actually get the game delivered? Because if we say yes to everything, then we'll never be able to release anything.
Right. Very critical position to actually get games produced. Because again, you don't want things just sort of floating around out there forever. And that idea of learning how to, almost say no without saying no, redirect, focus those ideas into something that can be implemented. More of the yes and. We want to do blah blah blah. Yes, and why don't we direct it in this way so that we can both, get it out the door sometime this century, and and make it something that people can play without, needing 20 fingers.
Yeah, and that's one of the main things that I believe is a huge problem many indie games have. And is one of the things I also learned with Game Love, because there were dates and we had to do whatever it took to actually make them. And it was a tough decision to say what gets in, what gets off.
Yes.
And that is the job for any kind of producer. It is a difficult job of saying yes or no.
How do you think your engineering background has sort of made you more effective in this job? Because I bet it has.
There's one silly story I can give you to explain this. Without other developers knowing that I was that I actually know how to code, they were like, I was asking for scopes. This was back in Gameloft, and at that time, most of the other producers that were working too there, like only one or two had an engineering background. I think only one actually, and everyone else was like from marketing or business or any other careers.
Yep.
So they felt that they could cheat on me, basically. The developers. They were like, no, this is going to take like days or a week. And I was like, bullshit. That takes like 3 hours. And they were like, wait, what?
Interesting.
And so that's one of the things that has helped me on understanding like how everything is connected. And sometimes also when we have a thing in engineering that we say that when you're working on something, you get cycle. Like in code, you actually get cycle and you go over it and over it and over it, and you cannot get out of it. So when there is a bug or something, you get into that cycle. And unless someone pulls you out, it's probably that it's going to take you like several days to figure out how to get out. So me having an engineering background has helped me too into like seeing when they're on that stage.
Yeah.
Being able to identify it, talking with them, allowing them to explain the problem, and sometimes for me to give them insight on, have you tried this? Or what if we do this other thing? And it's like, oh yeah, we can do that. I didn't thought about it. And they go into.
But I bet that's invaluable, really.
Right. Anytime we've talked to anyone, any creator that is either working with someone or they themselves have multiple disciplines, multiple areas of expertise, and bringing those together, it tends to be multiplicative. It tends to amplify the opportunities for great things to happen. You can speak the language of the sort of the business and sort of, producing and project management, but you can also understand the technical view, the technical approach. You can call them when they are trying to snowball or trying to sandbag their estimates. That kind of thing is really, really powerful. So I could see that being super interesting and super, super valuable to actually getting games created and working between teams.
But that is something that for some reason I don't have to fight it now that I'm at TechVis. I know it's a kind of respect you have to own and you have to get in some level. But in some way, even if some of the devs here didn't actually know me or anything, I didn't have to go through that, which is great too.
Yeah. The best organizations will look for that kind of strength in multiple disciplines and other skills as a component of what makes a person great, contribute to a team, and make use of that. The less effective organizations will say, "Oh no, here's your job. Don't go outside of this box," and that's that they're wasting talent in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you focus on internal projects. You're working with other producers. You're helping other producers, but you've also have these external projects that come in.
Yes.
Tell us about that and kind of how that works, because that's really interesting to me.
Well, we do believe that games should be not only play with other people, but also made and help other people make them. And we know we have the skill set, and we know we have the people that can alleviate some other teams, some other companies into making their games a reality. Because sometimes it is either companies not being able to find the right resources, or problems with HR or legal stuff, or because they just don't have enough money to pay someone within their countries. We have that philosophy that we have the resources, we have the options, we do everything that is required legally on human resources side, and everything to have it ready. And if you're a company that needs one developer, two developers, one artist, a QA team, or one QA specializing on your game only, that's when you come to us. And we have complete flexibility that you can tell me, you know what, for this month, I need one backend developer and one multiplayer developer and one QA, because I have the rest of the team. And you will get that. And you can take them for whatever amount of time you need them.
Very flexible.
Yes.
So outsourcing, that's a consultancy. I spent my whole entire career, and Seema did as well, in consulting. So we completely understand that model. And it makes a ton of sense. The idea of, especially, it's very risky to, as you're a small developer, an indie developer, to start hiring a bunch of people. It's very risky, because you don't know where the business is going to go. You don't know where your game is going to go. You're taking a shot in the dark. And being able to, where you just need some temporary help, but be able to get some reliable resources that become part of your team, that seems really, really great.
Yeah, we have people coming to us like saying, I have this great idea. They share the idea. We come up with the concept art. We come up with everything. We give them out that. And they say, this is exactly what I want, or let's change this or that. And then we get into making an MVP even. Like we do whatever the person. So
you'll
or
take on full projects then too?
Yes.
So in addition to outsourcing or consultancy of people, take a whole project. I could come to you and say, hey, I've got this idea. It's a game, and it's a mouse that eats cheese.
Jeff is getting excited now.
Yes. And if you got the idea and you got the money,
like, here's the designs, here's the storyboards, and maybe I'm bringing some assets to the table. Maybe I've got some art. I've got the mouse, but I need people to make all the different kinds of cheese. So that's interesting.
If you need a game designer, game economy designer, you need a product manager, project manager, art, programming on front end, even if it's Unreal or Unity, back end in any way, like Azure or AWS. We have experts on that too. Artificial intelligence, invaluable. Like whatever you need, we have it.
One place where I saw that this could be very necessary, and I think I saw a couple notes on your website, is when you have a company in another industry, a non-game company that wants to develop a product or a game of some kind, an educational game perhaps, that kind of company especially should not be creating a games division inside of McDonald's. Because McDonald's job is something else. McDonald's job is actually real estate. They operate restaurants, but they're a real estate company. But we've all seen this, and some of these companies want to sort of produce a game, and some of them get kind of interesting. That is the kind of thing where a company would come to you as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
We have a lot of different companies that are not related to video games, or some that are related to video games. And they come with us for ideas, even if they are not completely like video games. Even, for example, we have a client with apps, but it is a very specific interactive way of working that they come to us.
Now, what do you do on those kinds of projects? Are you doing project management on them? Are you talking to the client? Are you sort of
both?
Yeah, because that's kind of different again in consulting when you have to be client facing.
Yes.
It's different than a game studio whose client is players out there in the world. When your client is a business who's got a project that you're managing for them, it's a very different conversation.
Yes, because you have to consider not only, the end user, players or users, if it is an app, but you also have to consider like the revenue they are making along the way and how it can be improved, how they're going to survive, how it's going to be actually making money. Because at the end of the day, it's not just a matter of, is it fun? Like most games, it actually has to be like, it is a business. So we have to see it as a business.
Yeah, that's interesting. Now, do they bring the business plan to you, and do you consult on the business plan as well?
Depends on everyone. We have people who come in and just say like, this is my idea. This is my business plan. This is how I want it to work. Just make it happen and make it beautiful.
Yeah.
And do whatever I'm asking for for the next 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the other thing I was wondering in how this works. No one creates a game, puts it out there, and then nothing happens. There's always like patches and updates and that kind of thing. So is that kind of like part of your project too? Do you have sort of like ongoing work on the things that you've worked on and that kind of thing? All right.
Yeah, we always have different levels of post-production within our games, and especially with our clients, because there are many things that even if with the huge teams that we have in QA and everything, there are things that we can only see and we can only actually like make it happen when we have a certain volume of people using something.
Yeah, right.
So we always consider that it is going to be at least one update. Either is it going to be a hotfix or new content or new stuff, or is it going to be like many other updates for continuous integration that we are going to add like new worlds or new stuff, new levels, whatever. But this is always considered within obviously the budget for the client, what they are looking for, what they are expecting to happen. Because we do have clients that comes to us and they say like, just make the MVP.
Yep.
And then they come back like 1 year later saying, I have money now. Let's make it happen.
Yeah. Sure.
And even when we're working on that, the client is already like thinking ahead and thinking about updates before we actually finish the actual worldwide launch, how it should work always.
Yeah.
So it is fun to see and mix a little bit of what we are doing and considering what we are going to do later on. Because sometimes, at least my idea of how something should be done is if you're considering updates or new content or new stuff later on, you have to consider them from the beginning so you don't have to rework and refactor stuff and waste time to do it. So if you have them in consideration from the beginning, it may take a little bit longer at the beginning, but it's going to be more profitable on the long run.
And right. And you don't paint yourself into a corner and not being able to do some of the things that you want to do in the future. It's the difference between needing to being able to release updates or DLC or expansions to an existing game versus having to completely cut off development for that game and do, version 2 or to do something different or start from scratch because you didn't give yourself the flexibility to create the product that could be expanded.
Yeah, and our team is completely aware of that. They are used to working on that way of thinking. We always consider all that. We always consider if a game is going to be online, a lot of things related to that, how it can grow, how it can escalate. Because it's not the same, for example, for a multiplayer game to start with a server or a setup configuration for 100 people to later on being able to support 5,000, 10,000 people. Right. We have to consider it from the beginning, even if it is a flexible way of scaling all the backend, but it has to be considered from the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything from the user interface of how you log into the game and how you connect to other people and how you connect to a server, or if you're on a separate server, or how all of that works. I'm sure you'll pay again. You'll get yourself into trouble unless you're thinking about those things up front.
Yeah, and that's one of the main jobs for any producer in the world, that they have to think about the whole picture and ahead of the whole picture in the future. Because if you consider that, then the rest of the thing will. If you don't, then the rest of the thing, they might not.
Right. Now, I know this is certainly an aspect of it, the multiple languages, the multiple platforms. A lot of the area which I've seen from TagWiz and Gameloft was mobile games, mobile platforms, iOS, Android. Is that the primary platform, or are you guys also producing for consoles? And how complex is all of that?
It is our main platform by choice of most of our clients, but we also have the skill set, and we are working stuff related to PC and other consoles. Yeah.
Got it. That again, needing to understand that up front and structure the solution in such a way that you can go to those kinds of things, I'm sure has to be really critical.
Yes. It's not the same considering like a game for only, let's say, for example, iOS, than considering for Android, which right now has like several different stores in the world that, for example, Huawei doesn't allow certain things, and how you're going to be able to sell it on those devices. And it gets crazy.
Okay. So are you talking about constraints on like what kind of features are allowed, what kind of content is allowed in some of those other stores?
No, that is more, I would say that goes more into like cultural and country based things.
Yeah.
Rather than the hardware aspect, because it's going to be the same restrictions for mobile, PC, and consoles on a cultural level. For example, in Muslim or Arabic countries, you are not allowed to have a female character that shows like sleeves or any kind of that. It has to be a full sleeve all the way to the hand. It cannot have like V-necks or anything. It has to go all the way up to the neck.
Interesting.
You cannot put any kind of shorts or skirts. It has to be, if it is a skirt, it has to be full to the ankles. If it is short, it cannot be. It has to be a jeans or something that goes all the way to ankle. But that is a cultural thing.
Yeah.
Rather than a constraint on the hardware itself. So it's more of localization kind of deal. and
Yeah.
laws for those countries, because it is part of their law.
Right. We used to differentiate the difference between localization and internationalization, being localization is bringing it to the language and the date formats and those kinds of things. And then internationalization would be the kinds of things to make the product work in the other market. So that gets much more complex. I mean, there are frameworks for language translation and putting in different languages and slotting in languages, but even that gets a little bit complicated because you have to worry about language sizes and left to right and top to bottom. And
I use that more for translation itself, because localization, it also has to consider like cultural things, how they're used to seeing things, because it's not the same. For example, in Spanish, we have in Mexico words that are not used in the rest of Latin America or Spain. So if you check out, for example, the movie Shrek, you will see that it has Spanish for Spain. Then it has like neutral Spanish kind of, or international Spanish, something like that. And then it's a Mexican version.
Interesting.
It's completely, even if it's the same voices, the voiceovers for the Mexican version and the international Spanish version, the jokes, the things, how the timing for everything is completely different.
Yeah.
And it's not about only the translation, it's about the localization, making it work for that country, for that area, which it also includes, in the case of Arabic countries, the changes in the clothing and some scenes that should be restricted for other countries too. There are countries that have this thing where you cannot show like blood in red. It has to be either other color or non-existent. That is part also of localization.
Yeah,
even though we are used to seeing localization just as translations.
Yeah, very interesting. And so much to think about, especially when you're trying to make a global game. It seems you would need to consult with someone that's an expert in that, and that would be a huge benefit, a huge value that you guys could bring, I'm sure.
Yeah, and that's why we also have like our historical advisor always near to us whenever we do something.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of the differences in Latin America versus Spain and different languages, and I know you work a lot as an ambassador for women in games across Latin America and specifically in Mexico.
Yeah.
So why don't we take the next sort of 15 minutes or so and talk a little bit about that, because there's a whole bunch I want to sort of hear about just in terms of now looking across Latin America, games development, the games industry, and women in games. Sort of what's your perspective there?
It is quite interesting because at least in Mexico, we started Women in Gaming because we came with one question. Am I alone? I know it sounds super sad, but it is a reality for many women in the industry. Like, where are the other women? If I don't see them in the same company as I work in, it's really difficult sometimes to see them. And the founder of Women in GameX, she was like, I don't know any other women. For some reason, I was. It's been like 15 years that I've been speaking at congresses and some other events and schools and everything. So I don't know how she got a hand on me, and she invited me to have a chat about video games and how it was to be a project manager and all that. And we started to see that we actually have met other women, and we started like bringing them together and creating this community on which we want to have a place where we are all welcome. We are all available for networking, helping out, just support, or just to showcase what we're doing. And for example, I can tell you that out of all the around 60 or 40 studios, indie studios in Mexico. Right now we have around 11 or 9 studios that women are CEOs of those studios. They are
Interesting.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's like
It's a small
crazy.
number, but it's a number.
It is a number. Yes.
It's definitely a foundation. It's a
Yes.
start.
And that is something that we have been seeing thanks to Women in GameX. Because many other women have been going through the same thing, like thinking they were alone in the industry, fighting the ideas and what everyone is used to. And they have found a place where they belong and where they can be supportive and find other women doing the same thing. And the crazy thing is that even though I'm saying women, we actually have a huge non-binary and LGBT community within Women in GameX because they feel safe within our space.
Yeah.
And we have been creating a lot of crazy things. And one of our main projects within Women in GameX, along with other organizations in Latin America, is Woman Game Jam.
Yeah. Okay. So talk about that. So game jams in general, I think, are really interesting because
Yes.
a lot of new projects, a lot of new studios, a lot of skills come out of and partnerships come out of game jams. So talk about that one because I saw some of the pictures online, and I'm fascinated always to hear about another game jam and sort of like how it's working and what's coming out of it and things like that.
Yeah, Woman Game Jam is a collaboration of different countries. Last year we were 11, if I'm not mistaken. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. No, 10. We were 10 countries, which included Argentina, Bolivia, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Costa Rica, Mexico, Peru, and South Africa. Yes, South Africa joined us last year.
Interesting.
We had many people from these countries living in another country.
Okay.
Like in Greece, we actually had some people, a Mexican girl who was living in Greece, joining us, or in Spain or any other places. And it gets into a safe space. And obviously our main theme sometimes goes through more of a woman or diverse idea. For example, the theme for the year before last, yes, on 2021, it was Together Apart. That was the theme.
Okay.
So we always give a theme. And obviously we also have diversifiers and everything like many other game jams. But many of those diversifiers go around the LGBT community, being a woman, and those kind of themes. So we get to see a lot of crazy but beautiful things on Woman Game Jam. And last year we actually had 123 games published.
Interesting.
On that weekend. It was really fun. Yeah, it's a lot.
That's impressive.
And that's game jams usually work. It's a very constrained amount of time. A lot of what you were doing also was potentially remote as well. So it was people over Skype and or remote tools like that.
Yeah, we always have a Discord specifically made for the Woman Game Jam.
So how many people overall participated?
Last year we had 700 people.
Okay, so 700 people and 100 plus games coming out of that. So
yes,
it's 5 to 7 people per team. Is that kind of how that would work?
Yeah.
Okay.
We actually tell everyone that we suggest to have teams made out of 5 people.
Okay.
In general, they're having teams with over 11, 12 people because they are crazy.
But yeah,
it's normally around 5 6 people.
So do they
each
come
team.
with a team, or do they get assigned a team when they sort of
They
sign
get
up?
to
Or?
choose. Everyone's. You can get. It doesn't matter if you're a man or woman, non-binary. Doesn't matter how you identify yourself. You can join us. And basically, what we do is that if you come with a team already, like you already have your friends or colleagues or something, like you can come in and make the team with them. That is
Okay.
valid. If this is your first jam, or because that's one of the things that we have a lot of first time jammers always in Woman Game Jam, because they feel safe to start with us. And they just come in. They say, I need a team. I do this. I know how to do this other thing. And we always give like a couple of hours for icebreakers and community introducing themselves and everything, so they can build their own teams right there.
Interesting. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So of these 100 games, that's fascinating. So have you seen any of those games become something else, or become a published game? I mean, besides like get out in the game stores? And
Yeah, we have seen that. There is one studio that actually was born from 2020, if I'm not mistaken, Woman Game Jam.
Got it.
Yeah, it's funny.
I would expect that happens, because that's the kind of thing
it does.
That once you get creative people together, especially in that kind of situation where it's multiple disciplines.
Yes.
One of the places we see a lot of new indie studios sprout up is university. Because again, it's a games program. There's a bunch of people with multiple skills, multiple disciplines. You get put together, and you have to produce a project as a part of your games degree, typically. So a lot of times interesting things happen, and then a studio gets created. They try to make it into a thing. And there's been some amazing things. We've interviewed a couple of them that are now big studios, or big, but big enough. Game jams is another one. So I've heard multiple people say, this came out of a game jam, or I met this person at a game jam, and now we work together and we create this kind of thing. So
there are many people working like that. And one of the other things that we always do is that some of the studios actually use game jams to recruit people.
Interesting.
That is the other thing that we do. And we allow it because our mentors and everyone helping out with the organization sometimes, they are part of other studios, indie or whatever, but we are all part of the industry. So they are allowed to approach those people and offer them whatever they can.
That makes sense. What a better way to network, especially when you can see what people are producing and what their skills are and how much of a fit they would be to your team. That seems like a great opportunity. Yeah, that's excellent. Yeah. So when is this year's game jam?
We don't have the exact date yet. It's actually going to be decided in the next couple of days. It should be.
Okay.
But it's
we'll put it in the
always
show
around.
Notes by the time we get this out.
Hopefully. No, but it's normally around the third weekend in August.
Okay.
Around-ish.
Okay. Interesting. It'll be fascinating to see, just to watch the kinds of games that are coming out, because the other thing you can see a lot when you look at the results of game jams is the trends in gaming. You can see what people are thinking about, what the kinds of games that are being created or ideas that are out there. They can be really fascinating too, and maybe a bellwether for what new types of games we'll see in the next 3 to 5 years.
Oh, and you can also see crazy people doing crazy things, because we've seen people actually making multiplayer games in a 48-hour game jam. Like how? Wow. I don't know, but they have done that, and it's awesome.
Which is always strange to me. And we've heard this from a couple other people we've talked to as well. And that can happen. And then but it's an MVP as a core of a game potentially, but there's such a disparity between that and then needing, 30, 50 people from you guys for a year to then like turn into a real game. People, I think their idea of what it takes to make a game can get skewed when they see what can be created with tools today and the creative kernel, the nugget of what might be able to get out there, but then you still have to turn it into a real game.
One of the things is that I see any game jam more than an MVP as a prototype. It is a really good way to have a prototype of the game, of the idea, of everything. And from there, you can actually see what works, what didn't. Like you can start polishing the idea itself. Like one of the things I always tell anyone at the Woman Game Jam or any other game jam I'm invited as a mentor is that they should always write down whatever crazy idea they come up with. Even if at the end of the day, they don't actually make it happen, but they have to write it down. So once the game jam is done, they can revisit those ideas and see if they are worth the time, if they actually want them to happen. And for example, there is a game here in Mexico from the studio One Simple Game that is called I'm Not Jelly. The prototype of that game came from a game jam.
Okay.
And it was part of the IGN round for partnership and sponsorship. I don't remember which one was it, but they got a really good review from Reggie on the game. They didn't win, but they actually got really good reviews for the game, and it's really good right now. And it's completely different from what it was when it came out from a game jam.
Interesting. Very interesting. All right. Well, that gives us a lot to think about and an opportunity to go and research some of these things and watch this August for the Women Game Jam.
Yeah, see what comes out.
Gets produced.
Yeah.
You can actually check out all the games from the past game jams on itch.io. We have our own Woman Game Jam page for all the years. It is available there, so you can go and check them out. Some are in Portuguese because we have a lot of Brazilian teams. Some are in Spanish, but there are many in English too. So
excellent. Well, maybe we'll put a link in the show notes for anyone that wants to check it out. Well, thank you very much for jumping in with us. This has been fascinating in a couple different directions.
Yeah, really eye-opening.
Both getting to hear about you, your role, producer, project manager, how that's working, what you worked on, and then another area of the world where we're seeing games get developed and interesting things are being produced. And that's something that we're always very excited about. So
yeah, it's crazy what many people think about when they think about Mexico. It's mostly the idea behind Hollywood's Mexico, which is sombreros, serapes, and tequila. That's basically how they summarize Mexico. But Mexico has a really good potential and a really great experience and expertise of people in different areas. And that's what we are always trying to do at TechWiz. Get them and showcase them and use them across all the other projects that we have, either internally or on our outsourcing.
Yeah, excellent. And I'm not surprised. One of the places I worked was included at Accenture, and Avanade included our studio, and we had partner studios and divisions of Accenture that were in Mexico that were doing a lot of the key studio development work of websites and graphic design and that kind of thing. It was one of the top places in the world for us to go and get that kind of creative work done. So
yeah.
Again, thank you very much. I think this has been awesome, and hopefully we can stay connected and talk again when you get some new games coming out. We'll check those out too, and I can't wait to see what happens at Game Jam in August. So
yes,
definitely, yeah.
So thank you very much, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
This has been a New Overlords production. For more, please visit newoverlords.com for video, subscribe and feed links, and other ways to help the show.